I've spent 26 years in medical social work and have learned a lot from people who have told me their stories and shared both their challenges and triumphs. And so I'm happy to share this with you today and let you know some of the things that you've taught me and that I'd like to pass on and hopefully reinforce with you in terms of what you're already doing well. So normally I like to do presentations where we can chat back and forth, but because this is being live streamed, it's going to be a little bit one way right now. But please know that there are cards on your table and you can write questions down and one of the moderators will pass them along. Or if you feel that you want to just speak it out loud, I'll just repeat the question. How's that sound? All right. So let's begin. The topic today is around managing difficult emotions and down days. And as you know, having to deal with cancer means that it changed everything. As much as you want things to be normal or like they used to be, it's sort of like you can't not be pregnant. It changes everything. And you move forward and you try to figure out the best way to get through it. And as we know, we can't ever really go back. We can only go forward. I often use the adage that evolution doesn't move backwards. It only moves forward. And so the opportunity today is for you to discover ways that you have found a way to move forward. And maybe some of the things that I bring today will remind you of what those are or allow you to learn more about other ways to think about this. So when we're having to face such difficult life challenges, in the midst of it all, we're trying to get a lot of answers. But we also are trying to maintain some quality of life with this new normal. And it has to do with how we're doing in all of these areas: physical, psychological, social, spiritual, emotional, all of it. So these are some things that we have to think about if we're finding quality of life or trying to get back to a sense of feeling better about our lives in the midst of it and managing all of those emotions that come along the way, because they're all there. All of the emotions that we can humanly experience come with cancer. And that's hard to imagine sometimes because we think of it always as very frightening and overwhelming. But I would imagine that all of you have still had moments where you've had joy and delight and you've felt some relief and support along the way. So let's see if we can move toward more of that. Here we are in terms of managing challenges about something that happened that was very unexpected. Most of us don't think of ourselves as ever getting sick in the future. When we have people around us who get sick, we sometimes think, gosh, what would I do if that were me? But then when it actually happens to us, it really is a very different experience than what we might have thought that it would be. So we have certain expectations about what our life should be like, and then when it changes, we have disappointments or discouragements, or we just feel really angry about it. It can be a number of things. And what I've discovered, at least in my own life, and you might have noticed it in yours as well, is that how we actually manage those disappointments and those expectations really have a lot to do with how we then settle into the sense of, okay, I still got this, I can figure this out, and we are able to manage whatever is in front of us. It's times when we're really pushing against what is that we have the most difficulty and the most intense emotions that we have a hard time managing. Does that make sense? So the sense of when we can accept more of what is and be able to step into, okay, now what do I do with this? We have a better sense of well-being. So there is a book that I read years ago called The Precious Present, and there's a line in there that struck me that simply says, pain is simply the difference between what is and what I want it to be. When I accept what is, I have less pain. And that is so true in terms of how we face challenges, especially around managing cancer or any major disappointment or upset in our lives. So in this presentation, we're not only going to think about how we feel, but we're also going to notice how we feel about what we think. As you can imagine, there's a great connection between our thinking and our feeling. And it's really quite powerful, and most of us take it for granted. So when you imagine a certain experience, or you think back at a certain experience, you have certain feelings about it, right? But what we often don't notice is sort of the meaning that we gave it, the story that we're telling, the words that we use, the language that we use, and how powerful that can be, whether we tell ourselves, this is absolutely awful, I can't stand it, we have one feeling, or we can say, wow, this is really hard, I'm scared, but I'm going to find what I need to get through it. I'm going to surround myself with the people and the information I need. And there's a different sense of hope, a different sense of what it even feels like physically. One of the things to keep in mind is your body doesn't know the difference between a real or imagined thought. So how you imagine or how you think about something, your body automatically responds to whatever that means. An example I often give to people is, imagine what it's like to bite into a very tart lemon. And if you take a moment and really sit with that, for a lot of people, they do what? They salivate, or they might pucker a little bit. And there's nowhere does your body say to you, well, that's silly, there's no lemon here. It just does what it knows to do whenever you bite into a lemon, whether it's really there or not. You also know this when you anticipate a really good meal or another experience that's really uplifting. Just thinking about it changes how your body feels and how you feel. So what is it that we can then do to restore that sense of feeling good when we're not feeling good, whether it's physically or emotionally? We were talking about then, how do we notice what we say to ourselves, and then what do we feel as a result, or vice versa? So what we know is it's very, very closely related. So what can we do about any of it? A lot of times we feel a very strong emotion, and the next thing we know is that we're just reacting to that emotion. We're perpetuating whatever that feels like. And we don't notice what it is we either said to ourselves right before it, or what we can say in the middle of it that helps us calm down or helps us find a sense of emotional groundedness again. So ultimately, we all want to be happy. Right? We want that sense of contentment. We want to know that our lives are still good, there's something worthwhile, and that we are still able to do the things that we enjoy to the best of our ability. So I like this little schematic because it tells us that we have choices along the way, right? So are you happy? Yes. Keep doing what you're doing. Are you happy? No. Do you want to be happy? Yes. Then change something. If you don't want to be happy, and there are some people who are seemingly perfectly content with just being pretty miserable and having a sense of what they want to complain about and feel quite justified in doing that for long periods of time. That's not to say that we don't ever have moments where we're angry and frustrated and we have things that we want to complain about, but how long we spend there, that's our choice. That's where we get to decide, okay, when is enough? Have I said enough? Have I dealt with this enough? Now am I ready to move to something else? So having said that, I wanted to draw your attention to a publication I just stumbled upon. And I have it with me today, and I would really encourage you, if you're interested in this, is to pick it up, take a look at it, because there's some wonderful articles about the research on happiness. Who knew we were studying that? But I think it's wonderful. Instead of what's making people miserable and what seems to be associated with disease or sadness or depression, now they're actually saying what actually makes people stronger? What helps them get through difficult times? How do you determine who's going to get through this issue, whether it's dealing with cancer or some other kinds of change in their life that they didn't want or like at all? How is it that some people seem to get through it with a better quality of life and maintain a higher level of happiness and contentment than those that don't? And so we've learned a lot. We don't know everything, but we're learning more than we did before about what the connections are, what makes a difference in terms of how we think and how we respond to any type of life challenge. And the important part about it is that we really get to pay attention. Now that we have something we can identify that is in us that we actually can control. So a lot of life is about what you can't control, right? And then it's a matter of deciding, what do you want to do with it? So I, again, learn a lot, and my teachers are all of you and many others who have sat in chairs similar to you in your doctor's office or in these rooms or in any support group, is to find out, what is it you're thinking, what are you telling yourself, and what really matters in terms of how do we take this thing that's so hard, this experience, and move beyond it, move through it, not ignore it, but actually find our strength and our courage to do what's next. So what we learned is that we have constant stories that go on in our mind in terms of how we give this meaning. And